I paid $147,000 for my daughter's dream wedding, only for her to kick me out for not fitting in. So I called the bank and stopped every single payment mid-reception. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, and the sound of my life breaking along with it echoed through the grand ballroom. I stood there, frozen, as $12,000 worth of silken pearls swished toward me. But the face above the dress wasn't the little girl I had raised. Emily looked at me with eyes as cold as river stones, her hand gripping Michael's arm like he was a shield against her own blood. Her voice didn't shake when she said the words that ended my world. "Dad, I'm sorry, but you weren't invited. Go away." The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the judgment of 60 people in designer gowns and $1,000 suits. I looked down at my gift box, the one I had wrapped myself with steady, construction-calloused hands. Beyond her shoulder, the ballroom was a sea of white roses imported from Ecuador, their fragrance mixing with the expensive perfume of people who didn't know the smell of sawdust or hard work. I had paid 3 months of profit just to rent these walls for her, and now they felt like a cage. Michael stepped forward, his tuxedo perfectly tailored, his smile sharp as a winter morning. "Mr. Clark, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice smooth and dismissive. I looked at him, then back at my daughter, searching for the girl who used to beg me to push her higher on the swing set. 28 years of bedtime stories and school plays were dissolving in the heat of her embarrassment. "What misunderstanding, Emily?" My voice sounded smaller than I intended. "I paid for this wedding. Every flower, every plate, even the dress you're wearing. I just wanted to congratulate you." Emily glanced at her guests, her face flushing red. "This is a private family celebration," she whispered, the lie cutting deeper than any blade. "Immediate family only. You don't understand the kind of people who are here, Dad. It's about fitting in." I understood perfectly. The man who had sacrificed his retirement and his comfort so his daughter could marry into this world had served his purpose. I was the ladder she had used to climb, and now that she was at the top, she was kicking me away. The quartet played on, a soft, elegant backdrop to my public humiliation. I set the gift box on a nearby table between untouched champagne and white orchids. "You're right," I said quietly. "I don't belong here." The walk to the exit felt like a marathon. My work boots, polished for the occasion, felt heavy and out of place against the pristine marble. Behind me, the artificial laughter resumed, and the whispered conversations picked up like a swarm of bees. Outside, the spring air hit my lungs, and for the first time in 25 years, I felt a different kind of weight. It wasn't the weight of responsibility, it was the weight of a decision. I reached my pickup truck, sitting alone in the far corner of a parking lot filled with luxury cars I would never afford. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady. 25 years of building Clark Construction from nothing had taught me patience, but it had also taught me the value of a contract. If I wasn't family enough to be at the table, I wasn't family enough to foot the bill. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for First National Bank Business Services. The dashboard clock showed 3:47 p.m. Saturday. The bank was closing soon, and the reception was just beginning. I pressed call. "First National, this is Patricia speaking. How may I assist you?" "Patricia, this is James Clark, account 7794512. I need to initiate stop payments on several authorized transactions, all of them, immediately." The phone call was the loudest thing in the quiet cab of my truck. I watched the venue's Gothic spires cast long shadows over the rows of Mercedes and BMWs, while Patricia's keyboard clicked in my ear. Each click was a line item of my daughter's betrayal being erased from my ledger. "I see several large transactions from today, Mr. Clark," Patricia said, her voice professional but laced with a hint of hesitation. "Which ones specifically?" "All wedding-related payments," I told her, my eyes fixed on the front entrance where more guests were arriving, unaware of the storm I was calling down. "Venue rental, catering deposit, floral arrangements, photography, the music services, everything. Implementation needs to be immediate." "Sir, These are significant amounts. The total is over $100,000 for today's authorizations alone. Are you certain? Completely certain. There's been a change in circumstances. The contract has been breached. I recited the authorization codes from memory. You don't run a 60-employee operation for 2 decades without learning to track every cent. $12,000 for the dress, $15,000 for the flowers, $30,000 for the catering. Numbers that represented months of sweat, late nights at the office, and the college fund I'd chosen over my own house repairs. Stop payments are now in effect, Mr. Clark. Confirmation numbers are being generated. I thanked her and hung up, but I wasn't finished. I dialed Elegant Affairs Catering next. Marcus, the manager Emily had insisted on because Michael's family knew quality, answered on the second ring. Elegant Affairs, this is Marcus. Marcus, this is James Clark. I'm calling about the Anderson wedding reception happening right now. I'm afraid there's been a financial complication. Payment authorization has been revoked. I suggest you protect your equipment and remaining food service immediately. There was a long silence on the other end. I'm sorry, what? We're in the middle of the main course service. The steak hasn't even left the kitchen. That's unfortunate timing, I said, my voice as level as a foundation beam. But the bank has stopped the funds. You might want to speak with the bride about alternative arrangements. I doubt she has the $30,000 on her, but that's no longer my concern. I hung up and moved down the list. The florist Susan was next. She gasped when I told her to salvage what she could of the orchids, then the photographer, then the string quartet. By the time I ended the last call at 4:15 p.m., the first catering van was already pulling into the service entrance. I didn't drive away. I sat there and watched. I watched as the light in the ballroom windows seemed to shift. I could imagine Marcus walking into that elegant space, his face grim, crossing the floor to where Emily stood in her $12,000 dress. I could see Michael's father, a man who spoke of class and legacy, realizing that the champagne was about to stop flowing because the simple construction worker had closed the tap. My phone buzzed. Emily's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. I watched through the windshield as Susan from Bellingham Blooms arrived with 2 assistants. They didn't go to the back. They walked right through the front door with empty plastic crates. Inside that room, my daughter was finding out that fitting in has a price, and she had just lost the only person willing to pay it. The irony was a bitter pill. I had spent 25 years making sure she never felt a moment of want, and in doing so, I had raised a woman who thought the world owed her everything for the crime of being beautiful. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking space, driving slowly past the front entrance. I caught a glimpse of Emily through the glass. She was pacing, her phone pressed to her ear, her face no longer radiant. It was twisted with the first taste of real panic. Michael was standing behind her, shouting at a server who was currently pulling a silk cloth off a dessert table. As I reached the exit of the parking lot, my phone buzzed again. Third missed call, then a text. Dad, the vendors are taking the flowers. Something is wrong with the cards. Call me now. I didn't call. I drove toward the highway, the city lights of Spokane beginning to flicker in the distance. I was going home to a house that had been too quiet since she left for Northwestern, a school that cost me $284,000 and apparently taught her that her father wasn't good enough for her social circle. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the dark for a long time. The silence wrapped around me like armor. I knew the next few days would be a war. Emily would cry, Michael would threaten, and his family would use every connection they had to shame me. But they forgot one thing. I built this life with my bare hands. I knew how to tear it down, too. I went into my home office and turned on the desk lamp. The warm light hit the rows of filing cabinets. I opened the drawer labeled Emily, Education and Support. It was time to do an audit. The phone rang again. This time, I listened to the voicemail. Dad, please. Michael's family is asking questions. The venue coordinator says we have to leave if we don't settle the bill by tonight. Where are you? I deleted the message and opened a new spreadsheet on my computer. The house was cold, but my mind was on fire with a systematic energy. I had 25 years of meticulous record keeping sitting in those cabinets. Every tuition check, every car insurance payment, every emergency wire transfer for a sorority trip or a designer handbag. I started at the beginning. Riverside Academy, $8,000 a year back in 2008, climbing to $12,000 by the time she graduated high school. That was $126,000 just to get her to college. I typed the numbers into the spreadsheet, the rhythmic tapping of the keys the only sound in the room. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it for clarity. I needed to see the ghost of the man I had been, the man who thought love was measured in bank transfers. Next came Northwestern, $52,000 a year for tuition alone, $15,000 for room and board. Then the extras, $3,500 for a spring break in Cancun because everyone was going, $8,200 for a summer in Italy because it was essential for networking. I found the receipts for the BMWs. The first one at 19, a $28,000 320i, because she was embarrassed to drive the Honda I'd bought her at 16. The second one at 25, a luxury SUV, because Michael's friends didn't drive sedans. By 2 a.m., the total at the bottom of the screen made my stomach turn. $937,000, nearly $1 million. That was the cost of 28 years of James Clark Always Has Time for Emily. It was the business expansions I never moved forward with. It was the vacation home I never bought. It was the retirement I'd pushed back a decade, and it had all been for a woman who told me I didn't belong at her wedding because I wore work boots. The phone buzzed. Emily's 14th call of the night. I finally picked up. "Hello, Emily." "Dad, finally, what have you done? How could you destroy my wedding?" Her voice was a jagged edge of panic and rage. I could hear the echo of a hotel lobby in the background. They had been kicked out of the venue. "I didn't destroy anything, Emily," I said, my voice flat. "I simply stopped paying for things. You told me I wasn't family. I took you at your word." "Why would a stranger pay for your party?" "There are 60 people here. Michael's parents had to pay for a block of rooms at the Grand Hotel just so we wouldn't be standing on the street. They're asking why the flowers were taken away while we were still taking photos." "Tell them the truth. Tell them you threw your father out, and he decided to take his money with him. It's a very simple story, Emily. Even Michael's high-class friends should be able to follow the logic." "You can't do this. We had a contract." "No. I had a contract with the vendors, and since the guest of honor decided I wasn't invited, I decided the contract was null and void." "Did Michael offer to help?" "He's the one with the tailored life, isn't he? Surely he can cover a $100,000 wedding bill." Silence. Then her voice shifted. The rage was replaced by the wheedling tone she used when she needed her rent covered. "Dad, please, I was stressed. It was wedding day nerves. I didn't mean it. Just call the bank. Fix this and we can talk tomorrow. Michael is so upset. His family thinks we're unstable." "You are unstable, Emily. You're living a life you can't afford on the back of a man you don't respect. That ends tonight." "What am I supposed to do? We have no money. My cards are maxed from the honeymoon shopping." "I suggest you ask Michael's father for a loan, or better yet, get a job. I hear Elegant Affairs is looking for servers. You might even recognize the uniform." I hung up before she could scream again. I felt a strange sense of peace. I printed the spreadsheet, 4 pages of documented entitlement, and organized the supporting documents into manila folders. Tomorrow, I was going to see Margaret Richards. She was the toughest lawyer in Spokane, and she'd been handling my business contracts for 20 years. I didn't sleep. I watched the sun come up over the pine trees, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. At 9 a.m. sharp, I was sitting in Margaret's office. She looked at the spreadsheet, then at me. "James, this is thorough," she said, her silver hair catching the morning light. "What do you want to do with this?" "I want to reclassify every dollar spent since her 21st birthday as a recoverable debt. I want a formal demand letter sent to the hotel where she's staying. $937,000, Margaret. I want her to see the number." "You know you might never see a dime of this, right? Legally, these were gifts. I don't care about the money. I want the truth on paper. I want her to understand that her lifestyle isn't a right. It was a sacrifice, and the man she dismissed owns every brick of the world she's standing on." Margaret nodded, her pen moving across a legal pad. "I can draft the demand. We'll include the documentation of the stop payments and the breach of verbal agreement regarding family status. It'll land like a bomb, James." "Good," I said, standing up. "I want it delivered by courier. Signature required." I walked out of the office and felt the first drop of rain. The storm was here. The courier delivered the packet at 2:15 p.m. on Sunday. I know because I received the notification on my phone while I was at a job site, watching a crew pour concrete. There's something honest about concrete. It doesn't lie. It doesn't betray you. And if you build it right, it lasts forever. My phone started ringing at 2:47 p.m. It didn't stop for 3 hours. Emily, Michael, Michael's father, even an aunt I hadn't spoken to in 5 years called to tell me I was being cruel. I ignored them all until the evening. I was sitting on my porch when a black sedan pulled into the driveway. Michael got out. He didn't look like the polished groom from the day before. His tie was loose, his jacket was gone, and his face was a mask of aristocratic fury. He marched up the steps, holding my legal packet like it was a piece of filth. "What is this?" he hissed, shoving the papers toward me. $900,000? Are you insane?" "It's an accounting, Michael," I said, not moving from my chair. "I figured since you're so concerned with quality and class, you'd want to know the market value of the woman you married. That's what it cost to build her. I'm just looking for a return on my investment." "This is harassment. My father is talking to his lawyers. You destroyed our reputation in front of the most influential families in the city. People are talking, Clark. They're saying you've lost your mind." "Let them talk. While they're talking, they can also look at the public records I'm about to file. Every stop payment is a matter of record now. Every vendor who didn't get paid is going to come looking for the people who signed the secondary contracts. That would be you and Emily, wouldn't it?" Michael's jaw tightened. "We don't have that kind of money. Emily told me you had everything handled." Emily lied, or rather, she assumed, a common mistake for people who've never had to earn anything. She probably thought the money grew on trees, much like she thought her father would just disappear quietly after being insulted. "You're going to withdraw this. You're going to pay the vendors, and you're going to apologize to my family." I stood up then. I'm not a small man, and 30 years of construction work has kept me solid. Michael took a half step back. "I'm going to do nothing of the sort," I said, my voice low. "In fact, I've already contacted the Spokane Business Journal. They're very interested in a story about the intersection of local industry and the old money social scene. I think a feature on the million-dollar daughter would be a big hit, especially with the itemized receipts for those BMWs you like to drive." Michael's face went from red to a sickly pale. "You wouldn't. Try me." "I've already lost my daughter. What else do I have to lose?" "My reputation. I'm a guy who pours dirt and steel for a living. My guys respect me because I pay them on time and I don't lie. That's my reputation. Yours, on the other hand, seems to depend entirely on people not knowing you're broke and living off your father-in-law." He turned without another word and stumbled back to his car. I watched him peel out of the driveway, the sound of his tires screaming in the quiet night. But Michael wasn't the only one with a plan. Monday morning, the attack began. I arrived at my office to find Rachel, my assistant, looking like she'd seen a ghost. She showed me her tablet. Emily had gone nuclear on social media. She'd posted a photo from the wedding, the one where she looked radiant and I was nowhere to be seen, with a long, tearful caption. She painted me as a monster. She said I had a history of being controlling and unstable. She claimed I had cut off the wedding funding because she wouldn't let me dictate her husband's career. She even hinted that I had a drinking problem. The post had 500 shares in 3 hours. The comments were a bloodbath. How could a father do this? What a pathetic, bitter man. He should be ashamed. By noon, 3 of my subcontractors had called to ask if the rumors were true. Bob Martinez, who supplied my concrete for 20 years, sounded genuinely worried. "James, people are saying you're having a breakdown. The city council is reviewing the contracts for the new bridge project, and someone brought up your stability. You need to get ahead of this." I sat at my desk and looked at the screen. My own daughter was trying to destroy the business that had fed her for 28 years. She was trying to take away the livelihoods of the 60 people who worked for me, just to save her own face. The betrayal I'd felt in the ballroom was nothing compared to this. That was an insult. This was an execution attempt. I picked up the phone and called Margaret Richards. Margaret, remember that press conference we talked about? Set it up for tomorrow morning and tell the Business Journal I'm giving them the full spreadsheet, every single line. James, once you do this, there's no going back. You'll be exposing her entire life. She started the fire, I said, looking at a photo on my desk of Emily at age 5, holding my hand. I'm just going to show the world what she's burning. The morning of the press conference was gray and heavy with the smell of rain. We held it in the conference room of Margaret's firm. I had spent the night preparing the Truth Kits. Each one was a folder containing a summary of the $937,000 in support, copies of the stop payment orders, and a brief factual statement. 3 local news stations were there, along with the reporter from the Business Journal. I walked in wearing my best suit, but I kept my work boots on. I wanted them to see exactly who I was. I didn't give a long emotional speech. I stood behind the podium and looked directly into the cameras. My name is James Clark, I began. For 25 years, I have built a life in this city based on 2 things: hard work and family. Recently, my daughter Emily made a public statement claiming I destroyed her wedding out of malice. I am here today to provide the context she conveniently left out. I signaled to Rachel, who started the slideshow. The first slide was the total, $937,000. A collective gasp went up from the reporters. This is what it cost to raise my daughter, I said. It includes $126,000 for private school, $284,000 for Northwestern University, and over $180,000 in personal lifestyle subsidies. On Saturday, at a wedding that cost me $147,000, my daughter told me I wasn't invited because I didn't fit in with her new social circle. I let that sink in. I saw the reporters scribbling furiously. I am a businessman. When a partner tells me I am no longer part of the venture, I stop funding that venture. It's that simple. As for the claims of my instability, here are the bank records showing my company's 20-year history of growth and the 60 families we support. I spent 30 minutes answering questions. I was calm, professional, and devastatingly honest. When a reporter asked if I hated my daughter, I looked him in the eye and felt a lump in my throat for the first time. I love my daughter, I said, but I have spent 28 years teaching her that there are no consequences for her actions. I am finally giving her the one thing my money couldn't buy, an education in reality. By that afternoon, the tide had turned. The victim narrative Emily had built was crumbling under the weight of the numbers. People who had been outraged on her behalf were now horrified by her entitlement. I spent $15,000 on my kid's whole college, one commenter wrote. This guy spent that on her spring breaks. The social media momentum shifted like a landslide. The million-dollar daughter became a meme, a symbol of everything wrong with the pampered elite. Michael's family, so concerned with their reputation, found themselves at the center of a scandal they couldn't control. I went back to the job site. I needed to be around people who understood that things have to be built from the ground up. But the victory felt hollow. I had won the war, but I had lost the only person I'd ever truly done it all for. That evening, my phone rang. It wasn't a call. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Michael's father. We need to settle this quietly. The scandal is affecting our firm's holdings. Tell us your price to go away and retract the statements. I looked at the message and laughed. They still didn't get it. They thought everything had a price because they'd never had to pay for anything with their own soul. I was about to delete it when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from Emily, but she wasn't screaming. She was sobbing. Dad, Michael's gone. His father made him leave. He said I'm a liability. They won't pay the hotel bill. I'm sitting in the lobby with my suitcases and nobody will answer their phone. I don't know what to do. Please, I have nowhere to go. I stood on my porch, looking out at the pines. The silence of the house was louder than ever. She was 28 years old, married for 6 days, and she was finally standing exactly where she had put me, outside in the cold, with nothing. I reached for my keys. I wasn't going to fix it for her. I wasn't going to write a check. But for the first time in a week, I was going to see her face to face. The Grand Hotel was 20 minutes away. I arrived to find her sitting on a gold-upholstered bench in the corner of the lobby, looking small and broken in a designer coat I'd paid for last Christmas. When she saw me, she didn't run. She just looked at me with Sarah's eyes, and for a second, I saw the 8-year-old girl who'd lost her mother. "Dad," she whispered. "Stand up, Emily," I said. "We have a lot to talk about, and none of it is going to be easy." The gold leaf and heavy velvet of the Grand Hotel lobby felt like a tomb. Emily sat on her luggage, her wedding ring glinting under the chandeliers, a piece of jewelry that suddenly looked like a shackle she couldn't afford. I stood over her, my shadow stretching across the polished floor, and I didn't offer my hand. Michael was gone. His family had cut her off with the clinical precision of a surgeon, and for the first time in 28 years, the bank of James Clark was closed for business. "Dad, please," she whispered, her voice cracking as she looked at the marble exit. "The manager says if the bill isn't settled by midnight, they're calling the police for theft of services. I don't have $1, Dad. Not $1. I looked at the daughter I had raised to be a princess and felt a cold, hard clarity. "Michael's father called me this morning," I said, my voice echoing in the quiet lobby. "He offered me a price to go away, to retract the truth, to keep their precious Anderson name clean from the mess you made." Emily's eyes widened with a flicker of hope. "And? Did you take it? Can we fix this?" I told him his money wasn't green enough, I replied, and watched that hope die. "You wanted to be an Anderson, Emily. You wanted their class and their circles. Well, this is how they treat liabilities. They don't have family, they have assets, and you just became a debt they're writing off." She started to sob then, real, ugly sobs that drew the attention of the concierge. "I have nowhere to go. My friends won't pick up the phone. Even Sarah and Lisa blocked me after they saw the spreadsheets you posted." "That's because their parents saw them too," I said. "The whole city knows the cost of you now, Emily. $937,000. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single key. Not to my house, but to a small one-bedroom apartment I owned near one of my construction yards. I dropped it onto her lap. "I settled the hotel bill for tonight only," I told her, "and I'm transferring $1,000 to your account. That is for food and your first month's utilities at this address. After that, the account is dry." "$1,000? She gasped, looking at the key like it was a lead weight. "That won't even cover my hair appointment next week." "Then I guess your hair is going to be very expensive," I said, turning toward the door. "There's a job opening for a clerk at the yard office. It pays $18 an hour. If you're there at 7 a.m. Monday, you might have a future. If not, don't call me again." I walked out into the rain, leaving her sitting in the ruins of her vanity. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification from my lawyer. Michael's family had filed for a preliminary annulment, citing financial deception. They were moving faster than I expected, but they were about to find out that James Clark doesn't just build walls, he knows how to hold the line. The next morning, the headlines in the Spokane Business Journal didn't focus on the wedding. They focused on the documents. The city was talking about the entitlement audit, and for the first time, the construction workers and the shop owners were the ones being heard. But as I pulled into my office, I saw a familiar black sedan parked in my spot, and I knew the Andersons weren't done trying to buy their way out of the truth. Michael's father, Arthur Anderson, was waiting in my lobby, looking like a man who had never been forced to wait for anything in his life. He stood when I walked in, his expression tight and controlled. My staff watched from behind their desks, the air in the office thick with the scent of a brewing fight. "James," he said, skipping the pleasantries, "we've had our lawyers look over your recoverable debt filing. It's a circus act. You know as well as I do that you can't sue your own daughter for her upbringing." "I'm not suing her for her upbringing, Arthur," I said, walking past him into my office. "I'm reclaiming assets that were obtained under the pretense of a family relationship that she publicly dissolved. It's a breach of a verbal trust. He followed me in, slamming the door behind him. You're destroying my son's career before it even starts. The firm won't put him on the junior partner track with this hanging over him. People are calling us scammers, James. Scammers. Then maybe he should have married for something other than a dowry he thought I was providing, I replied, sitting at my desk. If he wants to save his reputation, he can start by paying the $30,000 catering bill he left Marcus with on Saturday. My stop payment stands. We aren't paying for a party that ended in a robbery, Arthur shouted, his face turning a dark shade of purple. Then I guess the creditors will see you in court, I said. And when they do, I'll be there with the receipts showing you were the one who insisted on the premium service while knowing your son didn't have a penny to his name. Arthur lunged toward my desk, but stopped when he saw the recording light on my phone. I didn't blink. I'd faced tougher men on skyscraper skeletons in 50-mile-per-hour winds. He straightened his silk tie, his hands shaking with a rage he couldn't vent. You'll regret this, Clark, he hissed. You think the city wants to work with a man who ruins his own children? We'll make sure you never get another municipal contract in this state. I've got 60 families depending on me, Arthur, I said, leaning forward. And I've got 25 years of clean audits. You want to go to war over contracts? Let's go. But remember, I build things. You just trade on a name that's currently trending for all the wrong reasons. He stormed out, and the silence that followed was broken only by the hum of my computer. I checked the yard camera. It was 7:02 a.m. I looked at the gate, expecting it to be empty, but then a rusted taxi pulled up to the entrance. Emily got out. She wasn't wearing the designer coat. She was in a pair of old jeans and a sweatshirt she must have kept from high school. She walked toward the yard office, her head down, her shoulders hunched against the wind. She looked at the heavy steel door, hesitated for a second, and then pulled it open. I sat back in my chair, my heart doing a strange heavy thump against my ribs. She had shown up. It was the first time in 10 years she had been anywhere at 7 a.m. without me dragging her there. But the real test was just beginning. My office phone rang. It was the foreman, Dave. Boss, there's a girl here. Says she's the new clerk. She looks like she's been crying for 3 days straight. You want me to send her home? No, Dave, I said, watching her through the monitor. Give her the filing for the 2023 site audits, all of them, and tell her if she misses 1 decimal point, she's docked for the hour. The first week was a gauntlet. Every day I watched the cameras, and every day I saw Emily sitting at that cramped desk in the yard office, surrounded by the smell of diesel and the roar of excavators. She didn't call me. She didn't text for money. On Wednesday, I saw her eating a peanut butter sandwich out of a paper bag while the crew took their lunch break. The public war hadn't stopped. The Andersons had filed a countersuit for defamation, claiming my public spreadsheet was an invasion of privacy. But the community wasn't buying it. Every time the story ran, more people came forward with their own stories of the Anderson family's arrogance. My business associates, men I'd worked with for decades, were calling to offer their support and their legal testimony if needed. On Friday, I decided to walk down to the yard. I didn't go in as a father. I went in as the owner. The yard office was sweltering, the air conditioner rattling in the window. Emily was buried under a mountain of invoices, her fingers stained with ink. She looked up when I walked in, and for the first time, she didn't look for an escape. The 2023 audits are finished, Mr. Clark, she said, her voice formal and tired. I found 3 discrepancies in the lumber surcharges from the July project. It's about $4,200 we were overcharged. I took the folder from her. She had found them, the mistakes I'd left there as a test. I looked at her, and I saw the smudge of dirt on her cheek and the way she was holding her pen like a tool instead of an accessory. Good work, I said. Dave says you haven't been late once. I don't have a car, Dad, she said, the dad slipping out before she could catch it. I've been taking the bus. It takes an hour and a half to get here from that apartment. The bus builds character, I replied, but the ice in my chest was starting to crack. I heard about the annulment. Michael's lawyers are trying to serve you. Emily leaned back, her eyes hard. They already did. Yesterday at the bus stop. Michael didn't even come himself. He sent a courier. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. He said I was a financial burden. The man who spent $5,000 of your money on a watch last month called me a burden. What are you going to do? I asked. I'm going to let him have it, she said. I don't want the ring. I don't want the name. I just want to finish these files so I can get my paycheck. I left her there and went back to my office. I called Margaret Richards. Drop the recoverable debt filing against Emily, I said, but keep the one against the Andersons for the wedding costs, and tell them if they want to settle, they can pay every vendor in full plus interest and issue a public apology to Clark Construction. And if they don't? Margaret asked. Then we go to discovery, I said. And I'll make sure every offshore account Arthur Anderson is hiding from the city auditors ends up on the front page. That night, for the first time since the wedding, I slept for 8 hours. I dreamed of white roses. But in the dream, I was the one who pulled them up by the roots, and underneath the soil was rich and ready for something new to grow. The final showdown didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened at a city council meeting 3 weeks later. The Andersons were there, trying to block my bid on the new terminal project, whispering about unstable leadership and family scandals. Arthur Anderson stood up to speak, his voice booming with the confidence of a man who thought he still owned the room. But then the doors at the back of the chamber opened. Emily walked in. She wasn't the million-dollar daughter anymore. She was a witness. She walked to the microphone and looked the city council and her former father-in-law directly in the eye. "My name is Emily Clark," she said, her voice clear and steady through the speakers. "I am a clerk at Clark Construction. For years, I was part of a world that valued appearances over truth. I watched the Anderson family coordinate with city officials to inflate costs on the river project, using my father's business as a scapegoat for their own overages." The room went dead silent. Arthur Anderson's face went white. Michael tried to stand up, but his father pulled him back down. "I have the internal memos," Emily continued, holding up a folder of the very files she'd been auditing in the yard office. "And I have the bank records. My father didn't destroy my wedding because he was bitter. He stopped the payments because he realized he was funding a family of thieves." It was a total slaughter. Within an hour, the council had called for an emergency audit of all Anderson-linked projects. Within a week, Michael and his father were under investigation for municipal fraud. The annulment went through, but not because of Emily's deception. It went through because the Anderson name was now toxic. A month later, I was back at the construction site. The terminal project was ours. I was looking over the blueprints when a truck pulled up. Emily got out carrying a stack of payroll sheets. She'd been promoted to junior administrator. "You missed a signature on the bridge crew's overtime," she said, handing me the pen. "I did I?" I asked, looking at her. She didn't have the designer handbag or the Ecuadorian roses, but she had something Sarah would have been proud of. She had the respect of the men in the yard, and she had the look of someone who knew exactly what a dollar was worth. "Dad," she said as I signed the paper, "I was thinking about that $937,000. "Forget the money, Emily," I said, handing her back the clipboard. "The debt is settled." "No," she said, her green eyes bright and serious. "I'm going to pay it back. It might take me 40 years, but I'm going to pay it back." I watched her walk back to her truck, a used Ford I'd helped her pick out with her own savings. She didn't look back. She had a job to do. I stood there on the edge of the foundation, the smell of fresh earth and diesel in my lungs. I had lost a daughter at a wedding, but I had found her again in a construction yard. And as the first steel beams of the new terminal rose toward the Spokane sky, I knew I had finally built something that would actually last. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.